Coming up on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, we dive into the decision to retain Kermit Davis for another year. We talk about some storylines that aren't being covered in college football, and Jason Jaramillo from StatHero comes by to talk about joining in with Daily Fantasy before the NCAA tournament. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, this is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. I am your host, Stephen Willis. Yesterday's show had Cody Pruitt on it. We appreciate him stopping by. It was a fantastic show, and we will be doing that again as football continues. He'll be one of our analysts that kind of looks at the football situation going on along with Bill Flowers. So that's kind of our football broadcasting team, so to speak. We're pretty proud about that. So before we get started, I do want to tell you today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Now, we're going to do things a little bit differently today. Today's going to be kind of a stream of consciousness show. We got Jason Jaramillo from StatHero that's going to come up in the third segment. But before we get to that, we want to talk about that, and we want to talk about some storylines in spring football that may not be getting the coverage that the only story that anybody cares about, the quarterback competition, is getting. So just like some other questions that need to be answered this spring. But before we get started, we are going to talk about Kermit Davis and the decision to retain Kermit Davis. And yes, I understand. I absolutely understand the people that believe that the only way you can be hyped up about something or get excited about something is something new and shiny coming into the office. We're trained to think that way. I get that. But that's not what it is. It is the thought of winning, the expectation of winning, that good is coming around the corner. And there are people that's narrative, whether it be through money or whatever's going on for their own business, has decided that this year probably should be the time to do that for whatever reason. And I think that's just a vast miscalculation. There are games this year, 60-80% of the starting lineup was injured or out. You're going to have trouble winning the old school SEC with second teamers, but you will really have trouble winning the new school SEC with second teamers. Now, even with this, in this situation, Ole Miss went to overtime and lost 4 times. That means they are 4 games away from 8 SEC wins with this group and the injuries that they had. They were a shot from winning at the end of every game that went to overtime. They had a chance to do it. They couldn't pull it off. And for whatever reason that happened, that actually did happen. Now understand that is a whisker away from 8 SEC wins, including wins over Tennessee. They went into a scoring drought against Auburn. There's some big wins that Ole Miss needs next season that they can jump fairly considerably. Now, the thing that you need more than anything else, there needs to be some transfer portals. You need to find a center. You need to find a big man. You also need to find somebody that is that guy that can stop a scoring drought. That is the most important piece of this team. It was probably going to be Deshaun Ruffin, but he blew out his knee, and Ole Miss's offense and team suffered because he was out. But we need somebody that's just a shot maker. We waited all year for Matt Murrell to take on that mantle. He did not. Deshaun Ruffin was kind of turning into that, but you also have to remember he's a 5'9" point guard. There's going to be trouble down the road. So there probably needs to be a shot maker. I think Jarkel Joyner is a heck of a player. I really do. I like what he does. I don't think he fits this team. For whatever reason, I just do not think he fits this team. I think Jamin Brakefield has a chance to be really, really good. I don't think he's really, really good right now. But I think he will develop into really, really good. And whenever Deshaun Ruffin, Matt Murrell, and Jamin Brakefield are all really good together, this basketball team will be good. Period. And the only people that can bring people back to the pavilion are wins. I mean, the only thing that can do it is wins. It's not the shiny new thing. It's all performative. That's fake. That is something on anticipation that he's going to be good, but he might not actually be good. Kermit Davis has won SEC Coach of the Year, has gone to an NCAA tournament. 2 years later, probably should have went to another one. They had a better team probably than the one that went. They're just a victim of the bubble. And in between, there were down years for various reasons. And this year, injuries just completely destroyed the season. Whenever Deshaun Ruffin went down at LSU, I remember tweeting and talking about it. It's like, that's it. That's over. Hope you enjoyed it while it lasted. And it happened. And the apathy that the fan base took in was because of that. Don't forget that. They're watching these games. They know when they should really invest in something and when they shouldn't. And it's not a Kermit Davis thing, although that might be an excuse to some for what's going on. But it's a win thing. It's a hope thing. Ole Miss, after the LSU game, had won 3 of 4 games in the SEC before Deshaun Ruffin got injured. Won 3 or 4 games. The transformation was starting to happen. They took Tennessee to overtime. They played Auburn really tough until that scoring drought. Remember, it's not always exactly as it seems. And we are definitely closer than most people are willing to admit. But we have to get there. We have to make the transfer portal things that, because we couldn't do it with Nasir Brooks and all these things transferring over. We need to be very effective in the transfer portal. Our high school classes are fairly large, honestly, like 8 players deep in freshmen and sophomores if you include this class. So there's going to be some players get processed. Now, the Kermit's biggest failure and your biggest argument for people that want to get rid of him is the fact that Sammy Hutter, Austin Crowley, and guys that have been in the program for a very long time did not develop. They kind of just plateaued and stayed what they were for multiple years. And when we needed them this year, when those injuries happened, they were nowhere to be found. And that's something to remember with Kermit Davis and people that want to get rid of him. That is their main argument. That is their best argument. It's not people in the seats. Not with the SEC network. All of that is getting made up. All the games are on TV, and it actually makes it easier to be a basketball fan than whenever you were hoping to go to the building in the middle of Oxford, in North Mississippi. Hard to get to for most people for most midweek games. TV makes it a lot easier, and TV is going to make attendance go down and down and down. And we've seen it in football, we've seen it in everything. Attendance is going down and down and down because it's just easier to watch on TV. And the TV money is making that effective. Now, Ole Miss is still going to do pretty well in baseball. Ole Miss is going to still do very well in football. But basketball is always going to be a struggle. Basketball has always been a struggle. Even when Ole Miss was at its best. I was in school at Ole Miss when Ole Miss and Rob Evans and Mike White and Keith Carter and those guys were defeating Kentucky and we were storming the court and all that. We still had trouble selling out during that period whenever they were very, very good. Now, it's just because Oxford's a tough place to get to on midweek and you're relying a lot on Memphis and people coming in for games because Oxford by itself isn't big enough to sustain it by itself. So those midweek games are always going to be trouble. Now the weekends are going to be fine because people are going to come up from Jackson, from the coast, from Meridian, Vicksburg, the whole 9 yards to go to a ball game. But it's always going to be difficult for the midweek, and these Christmas vacation games are never going to be attended well because people just don't live that close to the pavilion. You're counting on people literally from Oxford at that point. So as excited as they are, there's not many of them. There's just not many of them that's willing to do whatever they do when every game is on TV. And you can see it and you don't have to do it. So I honestly think they need to look at it a different way. Best product on the floor, obviously. That should be the first, the foremost, the guiding light so to speak. But if you do that, put a good TV product on there. Try to win over the fan from Kalamazoo, Michigan. Try to win over the fan from Reno, Nevada. Try to win over those guys and build up the fan base that way without preconceived notions. Because you have a chance to do that. Deshaun Ruffin is an exciting player. Matt Murrell is an exciting player. And we saw against Mississippi State earlier this year what can happen when they click. When the big three click, this is a good team. And you saw that. But what you really need is somebody to prevent those scoring droughts from happening. That was the problem this year, the scoring droughts. 5, 6, 7 minutes of gameplay without scoring a basket. There's nobody that consistently could get to the rim and get the basket they need. When the outside shot wasn't falling, which at some period of the game, it's not going to, who's going to get you those points? Who's going to get you the free throw line? If you can stop those scoring droughts, you're going to be a very good team. And that's what people need to know, is this team has a chance to be pretty good pretty quick. And you can judge them from what happened at the end of the year. They were playing second teamers. But when Deshaun Ruffin and Matt Murrell have the ball and playing, they play together a different way than they do separately. You add in Jamin Brakefield, if he can get a little bit better next year. That is a big-time thing. His around-the-basket game is very good. Dwayne Curtis good. And you pick up a transfer for a wing. You pick up a transfer for a center. That's somebody that can be a shot maker, and you are in business. That's absolutely fantastic. Man, do I love March Madness, and I love these brackets, but I can't remember the last time I actually went deep or even won any money. I'm hedging my bets this year with StatHero's NCAA Pick'em contest. StatHero's NCAA Pick'ems pits the star players against each other in an amazing hybrid between fantasy and sports gambling. Take control back of all those handicappers that always seem to have the advantage. Start focusing on players you know best with gameplay that doesn't rely on big spreads, long arms, odds, or funky props. StatHero gives you the advantage, resulting in the gamers winning 4 times more often. Why? Because StatHero eliminates the mystery about who or what you are going up against. So sign up for free right now, stathero.com/lockedon, and use promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% deposit match. That's stathero.com/lockedon, promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% match. stathero.com/lockedon, promo code LOCKEDON. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So do me a favor, hit subscribe, hit the bell for notifications of new videos, and of course, upvote the video itself. It would be greatly appreciated. Also, if you have time, rate and review us on iTunes. Give us a 5-star review. It doesn't matter what you say, but give us a 5-star review there, and that'll help others find this show as well. So thank you very much for tuning in. Now, in the first segment, we talked about why Ole Miss deciding to keep Kermit Davis was the correct one, and how close we were, and how 4 overtime losses away from 8, 9 SEC wins. And that is important to realize with the roster that we had. There were some holes in this roster, but there's a chance to fix that. And you can fix that with recruiting and in the transfer portal. And you can fix it with the young class that we already have. James White, Deshaun Ruffin, they're fairly close, and I expect James White especially to make a jump next season. Eric Vanderheiden, I expect him to make a jump. I don't know so much about the kid from Tennessee, what he is going to do, because we're going to have to process people, and you're going to have to be kind of cutthroat. Remember, I talked yesterday, the relationship between college players and the university, and university fans are going to be different moving forward, and that is because you're going to see a lot of players get processed. You're going to see them jump into the transfer portal. You're going to see players move around, and that's just going to change the relationship. There's not going to be another Keith Carter. There's not going to be another Mike White. There's not going to be another Ansu Cisse, Anthony Boone, those guys, because of the way it's set up in college basketball. Just is what it is. But let's move on to football real quick. Now, Ole Miss has storylines outside of the quarterback competition that is going to hit. Now, the quarterback competition is going to suck up all the oxygen in the room. Just absolutely is. And there's not really a lot you can do about that. But there are other questions. For instance, Nick Broker moving to guard. How will that work out for him? Will Jeremy James be the left tackle? How's Mason Brooks going to adapt to SEC football? That is questions along the offensive line that's actually relatively important and actually affects the quarterback competitions. Zach Evans, can he stay healthy? How many yards will he get? So our question today, put it down in the comments below, but what is the non-quarterback competition storyline that is most on your radar? What are you looking for? What's the thing you want to see over the next 15 practices? I mean, because that's important. The other thing is the kicking game. Kicking game. Will Lane Kiffin go after a kicker in the grad transfer transfer portal? Will he do that? Is he going to be happy with Kel Nation or whoever else takes the job? There's a kid that's transferring from Southeast Louisiana to come up to Oxford. I was looking at him and looks like he didn't necessarily kick last year. So he might just be transferring to get closer to home as opposed to transferring to provide any type of depth, anything that is counted on. So anybody that's talking about that, that is my thing after looking into him a little bit. On the defensive side of the ball, I know Isheem Young, but Isheem Young, there's a little quote in his story about he knows the system, which confirms the 3-2-6. I've been telling you that for months, but people want to, in their head, change the reality of what's going on. So the 3-2-6, now you have a very versatile defensive line. Now you have a very versatile linebacker group. And these cross-trained safeties that can play all positions, this defense could be heck to deal with. But spring practice is important for them. And somebody like Isheem Young getting mental reps, I was kind of looking at him to potentially be a leader in waiting for this team. Now it's going to probably be Otis Reese, AJ Finley, the corners. I mean, those are probably going to be the guys. Unless you get on the field early, you can't really talk. You can't really lead as a backup. So look for that as defense. I expect Katie Hill to step up a little bit. Great year, by the way, last year. I was super impressed with Katie Hill as the season went on. He really embraced the role as a plugger and did his job absolutely perfectly. So, outside of the quarterback competition, those are probably the main stories. I am interested in offensive leadership. Other than the offensive line, I understand Jeremy James, I understand Nick Broker. Those guys are going to have roles on this team. But who is going to be the new skill guy that steps up? Matt Corral was a generational leader at Ole Miss's team. Not necessarily a generational player, but a generational leader. And because of that, I am curious to see what Jackson Dart, what Luke Altmaier, whoever wins that job, will they step up to take a part of that? Will Zach Evans step up? He's not really having that personality to do that. And if you look at that, there could be a gap in leadership on the offensive side of the ball. But leadership for the offensive side of the ball, make no mistake, it started in January with the offseason stuff. It's going to carry over into spring practice and into summer workouts. That's how this always works. So it is what it is. We've got Jason Jaramillo from StatHero coming up in the third segment of the show today. Kara McCutcheon had to call out, so we have Jason coming in to talk. He was on Locked On SEC earlier this week to talk about his product. And with the NCAA tournament coming up, I wanted to get it out to y'all as well. So we have that, and we have Built Bar, we have BetOnline, and then we're going to let Jason talk about what's going on with him. So stick around for that. But first, this is the time of year when I've pretty much given up on all my New Year's resolutions, but not this year. This year, I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right. Thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. Have you tried the Puffs? If you're not, you're missing out on some of Built Bar's best tasting treats. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar, they're a treat. Mint brownie, coconut almond, and all new for this month, white chocolate, cookies, and cream. They're all delicious. All new flavors are coming out all the time. If they think a flavor might be good, they'll make it. It will be delicious, and it will be good for you. At Built Bar, they're all about the taste. They make it taste delicious first, then figure out how to make it healthy, and I don't know how, but they pull it off every single time. So here's the offer. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15, and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off Built.com. Now, it's also that time of year again when college basketball's tournament is finally upon us. It's today even. From all the latest odds, contest, and player props, BetOnline.net is the number one source for all your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn about trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. And coming up right now, we've got Jason Jaramillo talking about StatHero and what they have to offer for the NCAA tournament.
Run along here, Locked On SEC, and man, we are talking all about the tournament, getting you guys ready. So much going on and so many different ways to get involved in the action. Look, there's gone are the days where you just fill out a bracket and then by Thursday night, your freaking bracket's busted, you're depressed, you're down to the dumps. So we figure we get somebody in here who might be able to give you another way to get involved with the tournament where, you know, you can actually keep playing after that little sheet of paper you filled out is gone and done and dead with on Thursday night. And one of the guys coming in here to talk a little bit about other ways you can get involved is our buddy Jason Jaramillo from StatHero. He is the CEO of StatHero and, of course, the app. StatHero, you can find in the App Store, and just go to stathero.com/lockedon is how you can find it on the website. But Jason, what's going on, man? Welcome in.
Chris, I love that Spanish twang you put on the last name, man. That sounded great.
Well, perfect. Glad we could get it right for you. Let's just jump right in, man. What are your thoughts on how the bracket kind of shaped out this weekend? Because look, there was a lot of things happened that were expected, but look, we cover the SEC. We were a little disappointed that Texas A&M didn't get in. We thought they did enough running through the conference tournament, losing to Tennessee in the championship game, but seemed like they had put together enough, but they get left out. But man, some big dogs up top with Tennessee and obviously Auburn and Kentucky and Arkansas. So SEC looks to be in pretty good shape here, but what'd you make on how the bracket checked out?
Well, you know, there was I'm going to call him a dark horse. Before the conference tournament even started, I was all on board with it's easy to say now, but Tennessee was my team. Where's the love, Chris? Like, how did they not get a higher seed than they got is at least my take on it, just looking at the bracket, right?
It seems like they don't put any focus on like why are we playing the conference championship games if you're not even going to take into account the winners of that, right?
Yeah, like A&M made it to the championship, but no, they don't deserve it.
Right.
So, yeah, I completely agree with you on that, man. But yeah, you know, that was probably the biggest one that stood out to me the most. You know, for me right now, I don't see Auburn really moving that far. At least this is, again, my personal opinion. Again, like you said, A&M didn't get the bid, but yeah, those were both good. Both of my main calls, because Auburn lost so early. You don't really see in the history of the tournament on a team losing early, going far in the tournament. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And when you lose early in your conference tournament game, it's very rarely do you make it deep into the tournament. So for Auburn, they're really gonna have to dig deep. But they got the talent, they got NBA talent on that roster. Jabari Smith is a monster, and he can go off at any given moment. Jason, I want to get into it a little bit. I know everyone is so used to filling out their brackets, and then they get busted in the first weekend, and you're done. Let our listeners know what you guys have going on over at StatHero that could kind of make the best time of year even better.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So what we're doing at StatHero, we opened up about a year ago, and it's basically a hybrid between fantasy sports and a sports book. And that meaning you're playing the house one-on-one on our head-to-head matchups. What StatHero does is we offer lineups that you see ahead of time that you get to pick and choose who you want to play. You put your lineup in, you put your play in, how much, we'll match it, and it's one-on-one, you versus us. So it's pretty simple. And then we have a pick'em that's been really popular with the college basketball side of things. And how pick'em works is we give you two rosters, Team A versus Team B. So for example, if you look at StatHero, we have a lot of single games. So if we're talking, for example, we have the North Carolina game up against Marquette. We basically take two players, a two-player lineup on one side, a two-player lineup on the other side, and then they face each other. And you basically say, okay, which team do I think is going to win? And then you basically pick that side and you put your play in, and that's it, you're in. So it's basically the fastest, easiest way to play DFS. A lot better odds than a sports book because you have to rely on that referee side of things and those bad calls and those bad beats. Now you're just betting on players. You're playing players. I'm rooting on two players to beat these two players. And again, it's getting a lot of traction. So that's what we're doing right now for the tournament.
I've been on the website before, and I've bet on the website. I actually just downloaded the app, so it's a little bit easier for me now to navigate the app because like when I first went to the website, it was a little overwhelming. Like you guys have so much stuff going on, but it's a good thing. Like you got head to head, you've got pick'em, you got parlays, you got survivor pools. There's so much to do. What would you recommend for somebody who's just getting started? They just downloaded the app, kind of want to ease their foot into the water. What's the best thing to kind of start with?
Oh, yeah, great question. We made the pick'em gameplay specifically for those beginners, for those people that aren't able to have the time to follow these teams, in detail, right? Sports betting, it seems like again, you have a 50-50 chance, but most of the time on a long-term basis, you're losing, right? I think the best sports bettors in the world are hitting 51, 52%. On StatHero, on the pick'em side of things, our users are hitting 45 to 60% consistently. That's 4 times higher than the industry win rate of 15% on these bigger tournaments, right? So I would definitely say the pick'em side of things. The pick'em, all you do is you're seeing two rosters and you're saying, I think this roster is going to win. Boom, making my pick. You're in 2 minutes.
And it's a mix of rosters, right? Like it's guys from all different teams on this one and on that one, right?
Exactly. So we have two different versions. We have what you just said, right? A bunch of different rosters. And then we do single games where we'll just take, if you want to just watch one game, we'll just use those rosters or use those players from that particular game, and we'll create two rosters next to each other.
It's very cool. And man, I mean, I think, look, I'm with you. I mean, you kind of get bored with just the same old. Everybody's looking for something a little bit different, something new. And with the game starting, I mean, we got the playing games going on, and then we got the tournament starting on Thursday, and there's tons of stuff going on. And do want to remind our listeners, you can go to RunYourPool. StatHero.com/lockedon. StatHero.com/lockedon. Use our promo code LOCKEDON, and they've got tons of great stuff going on there. Terms and conditions to apply. But Jason, last thing I got to know is who's in your Final Four? Who are we picking?
Man, like I said, I'm a Tennessee guy right now. But again, how can you not? I'm just talking SEC here, but because I know that's what your listeners are more into. But I think Kentucky has a legit chance at making the furthest run. My heart says Tennessee, but looking at Kentucky, maybe the loss in the conference tourney is going to be a good thing for them. And they have the best draw, I think, being in the East, being the number one. So as of now, I think my heart says Tennessee, but my mind says Kentucky. I think they're going to make the biggest run in the SEC. Which again, is that a big prediction? I'm not sure, but we do, Chris. Before I sign off too, I want to tell your listeners that we have a free pick'em contest that we're offering. That listeners for free can pick a side, and if they pick the right side, they're getting a free $25 on us. So all they got to do, if they lose, nothing happens. But if they pick the right side, go into our free plays on the pick'em side, and $25 to play with on us. So
that's very cool. And again, the app, I can't stress how easy it is. I mean, you just go on there, it's got all the sports, you pick which sport you want, and boom, you're in business. And StatHero.com/lockedon, the easiest way to get signed up and get in there. And Jason, it's gonna be fun, man. We're looking forward to it. Thursday and Friday, it is madness. Everybody's taking off of work, and you're just having some fun. And again, we'll still have our paper bracket, sure, but by Thursday night, I'm usually ripping this thing up and throwing it away, and I'm going to be on the StatHero app because this thing's going to be dead and gone with. So, Jason, thanks so much for the time. I really appreciate it, and man, we'll have to catch up again soon.
Thanks, Chris. You're the man. Appreciate it, man.
All right. He is Jason Jaramillo, CEO of StatHero. Head to stathero.com. This has been Locked On SEC.